Okay, good evening everyone, and thank you for joining us on tonight's webinar. This evening we're joined by Lizzie Bennett, who is an RDA participant and coach who specialises in vaulting. Lizzie is part of the CAMS College RDA group and also runs the Contessa BEV vaulting group. Just to remind you that we can take Q&As on the Q&A box or chat box, but we will be answering those at the end of the session. If you've got a question that you think of as you come along, please write it down so you don't forget, but they will all be picked up on at the end. So I would like to just hand over now to Lizzie, who will be sharing her presentation with us.
Thanks, Jo, and hello everybody. I'm just going to share my screen so we can get in on the, it's not a PowerPoint, but it is effectively a PowerPoint, the slides. I've got 16 slides and I'm going to try and get through them reasonably swiftly so that we've got plenty of time to chat at the end if there are anything. And let's start, and I think start with number one. So just wanted to talk about some of the really basic stuff that you have to be able to do when you're teaching vaulting. And I've lost my mouse for some reason. Oops, no, don't want that. Okay, how do I, hang on a minute. The problem I have is that my mouse is covering, there we go. The little pictures of me and Joe are covering up the slide, so I can't see what it says. Okay, so first thing to say, you might see down in the sort of middle-ish of the page, I've got a thing about hats. In RDA for vaulting, especially on the horse, training on the barrel, I was told you don't have to wear a hat for training, you do have to wear a hat for competing on the barrel. And when it comes to being on the horse, for both training and competing, you should wear a hat. In British Equestrian Vaulting, that's BEV, we don't have to wear hats at all. You can if you want to, but most people don't. And that's covered under separate insurance to the RDA insurance. And so there will be quite a lot of pictures where there are people on horses without hats, and that's because that would be in a BEV session. Obviously, if it's RDA, we will be wearing a hat, and you'll see a couple of shots like that. If anyone wants to talk about hats and then whether you should wear them or not, we can chat about it at the end, because it's a bit of a distraction with RDA, because in RDA you wear them anyway. So that's just a little disclaimer about hats. So number one, the most important thing about vaulting, which in my opinion, it's not vaulting if you're not doing this, is harmony with the horse. So every single move that you do in a vaulting routine, the number one thing that the judge is looking for is that you are in harmony with the horse. So the horse is not just a lump that you're doing a pretty move on. You have to be soft on the horse. We talk about softness a lot with our vaulters, which means the horse basically doesn't really feel that you're there very much. You know, you're keeping your weight right where it needs to be. You're moving gently. You're spreading out your weight across the horse as well. So that is the number one thing that we drum into our vaulters constantly. And that's true on the barrel as well, because there's no point teaching them without having that in their minds, because as soon as they get onto the horse, the poor horse is going to object, quite rightly, and they're going to get terrible marks, quite rightly. So it needs to be there right from the very beginning. And to be honest, I'm at a stage with all of my vaulters where if they make a mistake on the barrel, that's kind of okay, because that's what the barrel is for, so that the barrel can take those mistakes rather than the horse. But my vaulters will apologize to the barrel, and they say, sorry barrel, or sorry Tintin, or whatever it's called, just out of habit, because that's what they'd say to the horse. So that is the number one thing. And I think a lot of people who dislike vaulting don't really know that. They don't know that it's really, really important about that. And I have seen a lot of bad riding which isn't in harmony with the horse at all, and really not very much bad vaulting in that respect. So if people are a bit unsure about it, I think you need to keep coming back to that, because that's key. The other ones, athleticism of the horse and the vaulters. You don't necessarily need to be sort of an Olympic level athlete or gymnast, but you do need to be a bit more athletic than you would for riding. It is different kinds of strengths. I certainly find some things in vaulting easier than I do in riding. And I get on a horse, I'm riding and trying to do a decent leg yield, and I find I don't have the strength for it, but I can stand on a cantering horse. So it's not sort of completely transferable, but you do need to be quite fit and strong, and vaulting will make you fit and strong. Number 3 is creativity and artistry. This doesn't really come up in your compulsories routine, which we'll talk about in a bit, but it does come up in your freestyle, which is a large part of what we do. And I think this is really nice because if you have someone that's maybe not so sporty, but they are quite creative and they like to make up stories, or they like to interpret music, or they like to make costumes, that's where that they can really shine, basically. And then number 4 is teamwork. So I don't know if you've seen the thing with the FEI where they did a whole thing about 2 hearts. And that's great if you're doing a riding sport, but if you're doing carriage driving or vaulting, there's always going to be more than 2 hearts. So even if you're an individual vaulter, you've got your heart, the horse's heart, and your lunger's heart. And if you're in a team, then you can have up to 8 hearts if you've got a horse and a lunger as well. So even if you're an individual, you are in a team. And I think that's a really important part of vaulting. So that's the sort of core principles which I always have in mind when I'm teaching people. And if we move on to the next slide, some of the benefits for RDA participants, I'm not going to read them all out and insult your intelligence, you can do that, but basically they sort of come under 3 main headings, which would be physical benefits, such as the flexibility and coordination and balance, academic benefits, or not necessarily for those still at school, could be people who need help with their functional skills, that kind of thing. So counting, I mean, counting is key in vaulting. You're always counting, and being able to do that and perhaps tell a story at the same time is a really nice way to tie into some of the school topics that you might have with your vaulters. And then thirdly, there's these sort of personal benefits, which to me are things like having to take on responsibility and having a bit of independence and being able to choose your own ideas and being able to basically sort of take control of your own performance. Also perseverance, because you're not going to get far in this sport without it. And social skills, again, you know, they're pretty important. It's a very friendly sport. So whilst you don't have to be the life and soul of every party, it does help you just to sort of get to know other people in a nice way where you have similar interests. So those are some of the benefits your RDA participants can have. And there are also benefits to the groups. Some of these may be a bit contentious, so I'm going to go through them. So volunteers wise, you are likely to get younger people than you might otherwise, because this is quite a youthful sport anyway. So you might get current vaulters who want to give a bit back to the sport. And you might just get a completely different type of vaulter. You might a volunteer, sorry. So it might be someone that had never really thought about volunteering for RDA before, but they think, actually, this looks quite cool. I'll give this a go. Arguably, you need fewer volunteers for a session, based on the idea of you might have 3 volunteers per rider on a horse, plus a coach if you've got a leader and 2 sidewalkers. And in vaulting, you could get away with having a lunger and a coach and maybe someone to bunk them up, and they all sort of share those volunteers between themselves. So if you're struggling a bit with numbers, then this might be a nice way of doing it. And for your volunteers, they can also develop and use really different skills, just in exactly the same way as all the participants can. So that's your volunteers side. Then organizational, you can get through waiting lists quicker because you can have group sessions and you don't need a horse, which also comes down to the funding, but we'll do that in a sec. And I personally believe it is more inclusive than riding, because if you have someone who can't sit astride on a horse or who can't sit up on a horse independently, they can have a go at vaulting because they don't have to sit astride. They could sit with both legs to one side, they could lie on the horse, they could kneel, they could, I don't know, stand on their head if they found that easier. And if they find it hard to sit up themselves, then you're allowed to put another person up there with them. They can sit behind them, they can sit in front of them and just help to keep them stable on the horse. So in my particular view, it is more inclusive than riding. And also the fact that the vaulter doesn't have to be in control of the horse. So they can just leave all of that to somebody else and focus on doing their own thing. So funding, cheaper than riding. It is, believe it or not, once you've got it all set up and going, it is going to be cheaper than riding because you only need 1 horse for a group. And we all know that the horse is the expensive bit, right? Because it takes lots and lots of money to keep it going. So if you get a barrel, it's really, really cheap. You just literally buy the barrel. And that reduction in cost, you can either use to help fund other parts of your group, or you could use to make it easier for your vaulters to take part. And this is in BEV groups as well. I think currently a 1.5 hour session at Contessa is £25 per person. Whereas if they wanted to have a 1.5 hour riding lesson, it would cost a fortune. I don't even know how much it would cost. The idea is horrifying. So that's one way of saving a bit of money if you wanted to. There's also the idea that actually this is quite interesting and engaging to people who maybe have seen lots of pictures of cute kids on ponies or cute adults on ponies, and this is just very different. And you've also got your little ready-made display team there. So the team that we've got in the bottom left of this slide, that's us competing at Hartpury, so you can compete on the barrel at the national championships. And we also went to the game fair and we did our routine there, and it absolutely chucked it down. But it was great fun, and it helped raise a bit of funds, I think. So those are your groups those are your benefits for your groups and stuff. Moving on, so the equipment that you would actually need. If you want to start just with a barrel, then you need a barrel. You need somewhere to put your barrel, so an arena, or if you don't have an arena, you can put it somewhere else. Just put some mats down, just in case people fall off. And then it's not essential, but it's helpful to have something like a little mini trampoline or a springboard. I've got a little sort of air track pad here. It's like a sort of air cushion, and that just helps with mounting if you have people who are able to mount a bit more independently. And then in terms of your handles, or what your roller would be, either you can have a roller which you can put on your barrel, which is a bit expensive and it can slip, or you can have what I've got here on the right, which is just well, you can see the handles, they've just got tennis racket grip around them to give it a bit of padding. And the blue strap is a stirrup leather I got from a local saddlery very cheaply. And that's it. That's what you need. Nothing else really. So if you wanted to do it on the horse, you need the horse. Then you need a back pad, which is the sort of almost Pringle shaped one. And then a sausage pad goes underneath the roller. So it's called sausage because it's, when you take it off the horse, it's long and thin, just as cushioning, like a normal roller pad basically, but a bit fluffier. The roller is the expensive bit, apart from the horse, which is also more expensive. And that's got the handles and the Cossack loop stirrups on it already. Obviously, you need a girth to go with that as well. And on that particular roller, we have a girth which has to have the straps on the actual girth that goes underneath the horse's belly, because it's got kind of like a pulley system almost, which is just kinder to the horse, so it's nicer for us. And then we've got side reins, not expensive. Bridle, you'd probably have that already. Lunge line and whip, not that expensive. And then boots, if you need them. This horse wears brushing boots. Some horses have overreach boots as well. And our big hairy cob doesn't really need any boots at all, which is great. So that's it. In terms of equipment for the horse, it can get a bit more expensive because obviously it's the first 3 items on that list are a bit specialist. But if you were looking into it, then let me know and I'll try and find you somewhere that does them a bit more cheaply. So we've got a couple of little videos now. Basically, when you buy a barrel, sometimes it will come with stuff on, but it might not. So this is, oh gosh, I don't want them both going, but you can look at them both at once. So honestly, all you need to do is grab some really cheap gym mats. I think these were 99p each, bit of duct tape, tape them on. That's going to keep going for a while I do this. Took me ages because I'm slow. The video on the right is when I made it a little raincoat because I was fed up of not being able to practice in the rain because the mats do kind of just soak up water. If you're able to have your barrel somewhere under cover, then obviously that helps. I'm not, so that was annoying. But lots of people keep them in a spare stable or just generally in a barn somewhere or under a gazebo or something like that. All of that works. And you just want enough padding so that you can roll around on it a bit without feeling that there's a great big lump of metal sticking into you. And that's about it, really. There we go. So it's literally just very straightforward. Bung some mats on it, tape them down, job done. In case you were watching that one, we'll just really quickly watch this one because it is very quick. So just a little nice little rain cover. It has a little flappy bit here so I can take it off easily. It has little holes for the handles. And there's my dog. She's very cute. Okie dokie. Next. So these are just moves that, well, as it says, will benefit riders and vaulters who are just doing it every now and then. So if you just wanted to get a barrel, just literally for people to sort of sit on, play around on, to help them with their riding without really thinking about doing too much actual vaulting, these are all quite good little exercises. So number one is, we call it plank. Lying across needs a good bit of core strength, not a huge amount. Most people can do it with a bit of practice, but it's a nice one to work on. Number 2 is basically around the world, which is quite good for timing, and you can see how quickly they can do it. I have one vaulter who can do it quite slowly, and then I said, right, we're going to race. I'm going to run around the barrel, and you're going to see if you can go around the world and get there before me. And at the speed at which I run, this was actually not much of a challenge, and she was able to do it really easily. So I said, right, now you're going to do it one way and then the other way, and then it was more of a race. But that's quite nice just for sort of mobilizing people a bit. Number 3 is like a little sort of push-up type effort, good for a bit of strength, bit of shoulder strength and core strength. For 4 and 5, I got one of those little, what would you call it? Like sort of balanced wobbly cushion, air cushion things. So you can sit on it or stand on it or whatever, and it just sort of, you have to work your balance a bit. And it's actually quite hard straightening one leg and keeping the other one bent, or moving them and lifting them up and down, because you've got to keep your balance. So that was a good little exercise, which I will be using more of in the future. Number 6, you can't really tell, but the idea is you start with your bum on your feet, and then you lift your bum up to that. So then you go back to your feet, and it's basically mimicking the rising trot motion, which is quite useful for teaching riders, because it's really hard to teach them on a horse as the horse trots. It's also really hard to teach them in halt. So obviously you could bung a saddle on a barrel and do it that way, but this is also a nice little exercise. Number 7, just a stand, plain old stand, that will help them to get used to being up high, which, especially if they're not often up high, will be quite nice for them. And then number 8 is another little sort of strength move and just sort of feeling confident. And it's nice for prepping when they need to dismount if they have struggles with that, because they can hold their balance on that, and then when they're ready they can push down and feel that they're in control. Moving swiftly on. Okie dokie. I said I was going to tell you about compulsories. We'll do that now. So for an individual competition, a vaulter has to show compulsory routine and a freestyle routine, and the compulsory moves are basic seat, bench, which is the sort of kneeling move, and leg swings, and then freestyle is anything else. So I've sped this video up a bit because it wouldn't have been very interesting otherwise, but this is what you might have if you had a vaulter who wanted to compete. They have their mount, which can be assisted as well, basic seat, bench, they go back to sitting and they lift the leg up, and then they do the other one, and then they dismount. Compulsory is done. Freestyle, so anything else, you want to be using as much of the barrel as you can. You might get them standing up if they feel confident. Try and get a bit of kneeling, sitting, standing, lying, using the stirrup, going onto the neck of the horse, or it's more the withers really, and then using the rump of the horse as well. Nice little cross-legged thing, and a lying down move, and bam. So that should be achievable for quite a lot of RDA vaulters. Obviously there are some moves in there which won't be applicable for everyone, but I've made routines for people who were paralyzed below the waist, or who couldn't kneel, or who couldn't stand, or who couldn't sit astride. So it is possible to do. You just have to be a bit creative. And it's that's the kind of thing you could very well do at Hartpury in the individual competition. So moving on, next thing. Oh, I had a couple of little things to remind myself with here. So where I've written side reins, you might notice this horse as he goes, his side reins look terrible. I was actually lunging him. This is the only way he will do it. He is quite old and he's quite particular, and he likes being like this. And if you do anything else with the side reins, he just has a little hissy fit. So I know they don't look great, but they are what we need to do. We're going to think about harmony with the horse while we watch this, because this vault is lovely and soft. And also going back to what we said about volunteers, this is Bobby. She's 12. She has waited for the last 2.5 years to turn 12 so that she can volunteer with RDA. So she is sort of on the way to becoming our newest and youngest volunteer. She's really, really keen to help with all the vaulters and, well, everything actually. She's constantly asking me for, what can I do next? What can I do now? So this was her first proper assignment, as being videoed for this. Her and her mum were very happy for her to do it. So if we just play the video. So she's trying to just sit nice and still on him. He's a TB, 17 and a bit hands. Coming up to his 20s. Oh, this was filmed by one of the other kids, and she did go very zoomed in at times. So she's nice and soft again. And if you watch him, he's quite happy. He's snorting away, nice and loose. So we do this move to help warm him up. Just turn that down a bit. This helps him just work his back end a bit more. And then she does a sideways kneel. Everything she does is just nice and smooth. It's not too heavy. Nice and controlled. She's just warming up his back at this point. But if she were doing her freestyle, it would be exactly the same. She'd be nice and soft, absorbing the movement, keeping an eye on him, moving gently, nice and softly up to her feet. And then she goes bump, 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 nice and soft, very relaxed. Horse is very relaxed. And gently to sitting. So you can see she takes the weight in her arms a bit. Now she's going to give him a little fuss, and then he's going to have a little canter. And so that time he just was a little bit heavy coming down, just a tiny bit. So I've got her to go up again. She's nice and soft coming up. She's got her free kneel, which is quite a new move for her. So that's a little bit funny, and softer down that time. So doing the wrong leg. For this one, you can often tell if they're not quite balanced enough because the horse will trot as soon as you lift the leg, but she's nicely balanced on his back. And in the canter and in the trot, you want to be slightly to the inside, which she is. So in a nice landing. So that was Bobby, just showing the sort of softness on the horse that you want. So you don't want them to be paranoid about it, because then they're not soft anyway, because they're stressed. But you just want that little sort of consideration. So an arabesque, number 1, is a nice straightforward basic arabesque, and leg might not go quite that high, but this is one of the first moves that we would teach a vaulter. And then all the other ones are basically just done as a kind of, if you look at them, you can see some of the different ways of making it a bit more interesting. So you can adjust where you put your supporting leg. I've got one where the foot's on the handle, for example, or you might have a foot in the stirrup, or you might have a foot in the handle, like number 7. That's another of our little RDA vaulters. You can adjust your position on the horse. So number 8, we've got Eden standing on the neck, leaning on me. Not many people will be able to do that, but she can. You can have yourself on the rump. You can have all sorts of different things. You can do different things with your arms or your hands. Like you might have one arm out, or you might have one arm straight in front of you and one arm a bit behind. Just makes it look a bit different. So that's like the difference between 2 and 3, just mixing it up, making it more interesting for the judge. Your raised leg, you could do one leg straight, or you could do your leg bent, like Eden has in number 8. You can have a non-pointy toe, like I did in number 9, which was just sort of to see what it would look like. I quite like it. And of course, you can do it in pairs, as you can see on there as well. So with an arabesque, that's just one example of a very simple move, but it's lots of different ways of doing the move. And it's the same with all the sort of kneeling moves, basically anything. You just adjust where you are, which direction you're facing, and so on and so forth, and you have a more interesting routine. So the next slide is more barrel stuff, but some of the more advanced stuff if you feel like pushing yourself. Number 7 for me is extremely easy because I have a stupidly bendy back, apart from the bit where I broke it. But basically anything flexible wise I find really easy, so I do plenty of those because they're easy for me. But having the support moves, which require more strength, and then the sort of cartwheeling moves are quite a good challenge as well for me. So you can just basically keep going and going and going and making life harder. 6 and 11 I've kind of joined together. They're sort of on the right and the left because they are the same move, just different hand placement and a different view. And with all of these things, these are all freestyle moves, so you're just trying to do something which will look a bit interesting and which might say what you're doing with your music a bit. So I hope it might be interesting to watch this. So this is what I'm working on with the horse. This is sort of from the last year or so. So that's basically the one time I've managed to do that on my own. And then here's the basic seat again, going up to a bench, and then this is a flare, which needs a lot of work. That's okay, I've got time to work on it. Coming round to backwards, trying to do swings as well backwards. I'm rubbish at these too, but you know, it's fine, I'm working on them. And then we should have some freestyle bits, a bit of stand. Having a foot in a handle for me personally is much easier because it just makes me feel like I'm not going to fall off as much. Nice little flexibility one I like. I find jumping up to stand easier than using the handles. This was Lizzie trying to learn how to go upside down, sort of not particularly successfully. And then here, classic example of when things have gone a bit wonky, you just let go and go for it. This was from my RDA routine last year. He's a very good boy, this horse. This is a nice move, looks quite cool, very easy to do. And then up to the stand. So another way you can make it a bit harder is doing that without holding on. And there are lots of moves like that where maybe you can take one hand off to begin with, and then both hands off, and then do it backwards or sideways. And then we give him a good pat on the bum and we do his side reins because he was a good boy. So having seen that, this is where I started. So numbers 1, 2, and 3 were my first ever session. I was vaulting in jumper boots and my hair wasn't tied up and I had a hoodie on and I was wearing a hat with a peak, which you shouldn't do. But it was all cool. And the whole time I just sort of thought, this is really cool. This is really cool. I love this. I love this. I'm rubbish at this, but I love it. And then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they were all a couple of weeks after that. So anything where I had to lift my leg, I had to physically use my arm to lift my leg because I didn't have the strength to lift it. Number 5 is a bench. And I look at that now and the coach inside me is just like, oh, there are so many things wrong with that. But that's fine. You've all got to start somewhere. Number 7 was me trying to stand for the first time and feeling a bit nervous about it. And that was with the mechanical horse not moving, by the way, as well. So yeah, those were my first few goes on the mechanical horse. And then 9 and 10, I can't see what 11 is because it's hidden under my face. 9 and 10 was my first time ever on the real horse, which actually was quite good. And having done a lot on the mechanical horse, I was quite confident and felt okay with it. And then 12 and 13, that's with Boise, who's one of our RDA horses, actually, although we don't use him for vaulting anymore, sadly. But just sort of getting a bit more confident and trying new things. And that's really what it's all about. You just sort of make little tiny weeny progressions and just try things out and hope for the best. Usually it pays off. Still rattling through. So this is what I'm up to next. I imagine a lot of people have heard of Eden. If you haven't, now you have. So Eden's the vaulter with the gold top on. She is brilliant. She's also a great rider. She won her dressage class at Hartpury last year. And she's my pairs partner. So we do para pairs together within RDA, but also within British Equestrian Vaulting. And we just competed last weekend as well, which went really well. And basically I'm hoping to do more pairs with her. My aim for that, although I haven't told her this yet, is to qualify for the British Championships this year, which I think we probably will do. And also I want to do more individual stuff with my canter routines. Then bottom left picture, that's the team minus Eden. She couldn't make that particular session. So it would be nice to do more stuff with our team and get the team hopefully competing at Hartpury again. And then in the other pictures is the basics. You know, I'm not perfect at them yet, so I'm going to keep practicing them until I am. I practice my bench and my leg swings and my basic seat every day. And we'll keep doing so, because even if you can do all the really hard moves, if you can't do the basic ones right, then you're not going to get very far. So that's what's next. Really quickly, I want to do benefits for vaulters who also ride. So I also ride. I have competed with RDA dressage, show jumping and showing. Done musical ride as well. The bigger picture is after show jumping a few years ago, and that horse, I did not trust him an inch until we crossed the finish line, and then I let out a big sigh of relief, and then so did he. And that was a really good lesson in, your horse is only stressed because you're stressed, but I was stressed because he was stressed in the first place. So, you know, but it's one of those things where vaulting really, really helps with that, because you get a different kind of feel. And I'll come to that in a sec. So the obvious, which I put at the top of this list, is things like your balance and your coordination, fitness, strength, stamina, all of those kinds of things. The ground, you have a very different relationship with the ground as a vaulter compared to a rider, because as a vaulter, you start your routine on the ground and you finish your routine on the ground, and you might well hit the ground in between as well. So it's not something to be avoided at all costs. It's a very necessary part of what you're doing, which I think is really helpful when you're riding, because you think, well, if it goes wrong, I'll just dismount. Even if it's in canter, you know that you can. And then your feel and your connection with the horse, they sort of come together really. And I can't really describe it any other way than, imagine you're on a massive horse and you're standing on him and he's moving and you can't feel anything below your waist. And basically your life depends on him continuing at the same speed in the same way. And then you just realize that he's slightly distracted or that something out there is just slightly, you will pick up on that instantly. And the picking up on it thing, I thought I was quite good at that as a rider, but when I learned to vault, I realized how much better it could be. And you are so much more connected, and it's so useful to have in your riding because it becomes much more of a conversation with the horse rather than a yes, you will do this. And we all think we're having conversations with the horse, but really when you vault, you can't. All you can do is listen, and it teaches you just how much you weren't listening before. So that's my main benefit for vaulters who also ride. And then finally, here we go. So these are all the bits we haven't had time for yet. Just going down to where it says the perfect horse. All of these horses in the pictures are ones that we use in our vaulting sessions. We've got Toby as the little 13-1 Cremello. Then we've got Mr. B, Felix and Puro, who are the big, well, Mr. B is the thoroughbred, and then Felix and Puro down the bottom are big warm bloods, and then we've got a couple of cobs, and the Haflinger is a little one that one of the vaulters is her pony, and she brought us along to do a bit of vaulting. And all of them are really good. They're all brilliant. So if you've got anything like this in your club, doesn't have to be a Puro or a Felix, a big warm blood. It can be any of the others, and they all do well. At that point, I think I'm going to let Joe tell me what questions or anything there might be, or just generally hand over for questions. I hope I haven't gone too long.
No, I think we're okay just on time. Thank you, Lizzie. That was really interesting and really good to watch. So thank you very much. There haven't been any questions coming in yet, but if anyone would like to type any through to us on the chat box, we're happy to take them.
I'm just going to, no, that doesn't help me at all. Okay, don't worry. I was going to
just unshare.
Oh, chat. I don't know if this is my mouse. Ooh.
Have you got the chat box open as well now, Lizzie? We haven't. If anyone's got any questions, please feel free.
Or I can just go through some of the things that are on there.
Yeah, do you want to keep going through not yet covered while people... Oh, here we go.
I thought this might come up. This is a question for Joe. Over to you.
So there is a vaulting coach pathway. If you're already a riding coach, there's just a few additions on that because there are specific pre-coach training. So your pre-coach training is vaulting specific. Your coaching module there's a vaulting specific one as well. The best thing to do is these can be hosted by or trained by another vaulting coach or an advanced vaulting coach. So the best thing to do is drop us an email at National Office, and we can then put you in contact with your nearest vaulting group or vaulting coach that can come out to you and help with that training. Lizzie, you're also a vaulting coach, aren't you? So I believe there's a green card training that would be done both for barrel and ridden work. Then there is, like I say, the pre-coach vaulting module is specific. Pre-assessment checklist e-learning is vaulting specific. That brings you up to coaching training, which you can then do with supervised. And then you can do your vaulting coaching specific module and then be assessed. So it's a very similar pathway to your ridden coaches, but obviously more specifics going in there. I hope that kind of answered Louise, but we're more than happy to share contacts and details of vaulting coaches and advanced coaches that can come out and support groups.
Yes, I am East Region.
I think Louise is probably trying to get you on board, Lizzie.
I need to get my RDA vaulting stuff because I've got my BEV, but we need to sort of go it across. So
yeah, and it does mirror across, so that'd be good. Going forward into late spring, early summer, there will be more. National Office will be looking at arranging more vaulting training and more how to get started training for groups as well. Even especially to try and encourage more barrel use, because I know, Lizzie, that's one of your goals for this year, is to try and get more barrels into groups.
Yeah. I think the good thing with the barrels is that you can go from simply just sitting on it and helping people to, if you hold a bit with a pair of reins, or helping them to learn how to hold the reins, right up to full-on competition. So it's very versatile little bit of kit. Well, big bit of kit, but
okay, any further questions?
I have no idea.
No, Eileen, unfortunately the weekly webinars aren't counting as Coach CPD at the moment, but we have got some more dates going on the My RDA events page. There's more CPD dates either on at the moment or definitely going on in the next few days.
So I just need to talk to my dog a sec. Rosie, Rosie, up. She's doing. She likes to sit up in the window, but sometimes she needs a bit of encouragement to go. She just stands there looking at it, looking stressed. Well, she's found a ball now. That's all right. Oh. Sorry, everyone.
That's okay. It's really difficult on this because you can't tell when people are typing. So we'll just give it another few seconds in case anyone is in mid question.
Yes.
And then if there's no further, we can wrap it up.
I mean, if anyone wants to come and meet, well, come and see what we do in Contessa, we have a mix of para and non-disabled. Everyone just trains together. We have beginners not quite every week, but very, very regularly. You can come and give it a go. You can come and just watch. Yeah, there's not many other options. You can give it a go, you can watch. And we'd be very happy
Louise
to have
has asked
you.
what days.
Our main days at the moment are Saturdays and Sundays, but if that's an issue, because I know you're busy, we also do other times if we can arrange them. It's fairly flexible, but the main sort of group sessions would be Saturday and Sundays at usually 1:30 till 3.
Louise, if you want to drop me an email, I can share contact details of Lizzie if you're happy for that. I can act as in between to pass contact details over to you both if that's something you'd like to arrange. And Eileen has said that they do vaulting at Marlborough and can highly recommend it. So
Brilliant.
That's good to hear.
Brilliant.
So if everyone's happy, I'd just like to thank Lizzie again for another really good informative evening webinar. Hopefully it's inspired a few more groups to give it a go and get in contact with us so that we can help support that. And Lizzie, thank you very much for your time this evening and putting the presentation together for us.
No problem, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Right, thanks then, everybody.